Hi there, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Emma and I make videos on art, upcycling, and DIYs, so if that interests you, feel free to subscribe. Today I have a video that I am so excited to share with you. When we initially moved into our house, we redid our main floor, but we did not touch our bathroom. So in this video, I'm going to show my no demo guest bathroom makeover. It is super weird, super funky. I took a lot of risks in my opinion, and I think it turned out so cool, so let's get into the video. Welcome to my gross, beige, plain, bland, builder grade bathroom. It is not ideal at all, and I can't believe we didn't make a single change, even to these towel racks when we moved in. There were lots of weird holes in the walls, a builder grade mirror. This sink is absolutely horrendous. Like, how did I not recaulk this sink right when we moved in? Like, I don't know who did that caulk job, but I just need to talk. It's really bad. But everything in this whole room is beige, and we probably should have done this closer to when we moved in. It's got like peel and stick style flooring. It's all plastic. The countertops are fake. It is just not great. So we started by removing that mirror, and surprise, there was some wallpaper behind it. So apparently this bathroom has been touched since this house was built, which was honestly kind of shocking to me. I had to remove the screws and the trim that was holding on the mirror, and thankfully this wallpaper came off pretty easily. If I had done it right, I would have primed this area, but I didn't do that. I just did an extra coat of paint. I then started working on removing this very strange towel hanging situation with chains. I didn't know what to do with that anchor, so I just put it back in the wall. That's a problem for whoever's going to rip down this wall, if that ever happens. The rest of them weren't anchors, so I was able to get each of them out, and they all came out differently, which was kind of odd. There were also some nails. Hopefully they weren't attaching the drywall because I removed a few of them. Not a ton. And then I took some joint compound and filled all of the holes. There were so many of them. There were also a bunch of holes behind the mirror, so I made sure to get those and cover up everything. This took forever, and when we removed the mirror, we were left with a little bit of a surprise of a massive gap behind this little backsplash. So I filled it with wood and caulk, which apparently I didn't get a video of, and while I had my caulk/silicone out, I was like, you know what, might as well redo the sink now. So I got this really cool caulk remover tool, and it was so useful. I've removed caulk before, and this was so great. And then I used clear/white silicone, I believe, to redo the sink. At this point, I wasn't sure if I was going to replace the faucet, so that's why I did this in this order. And then it was time to paint after my little side gig of redoing the caulk, which was a total surprise. That's the thing about doing these renovations, is you never really know what you're going to uncover. I was not expecting to have to fill that giant gap, but I started with this gold paint going around the entire perimeter of the room. I am going to be painting the ceiling as well, and I'm going to be putting more peel and stick over the floors, so I didn't care if it got on the floors. I did end up needing 3 coats of paint. Yes, you heard that right. 3 coats of paint. I tried to do maybe even 4 on that like unprimed area, but it ended up being a lot more work than I was expecting. Typically you only need 2 coats, and then I also did the ceiling, so that was an additional layer of just extra time and extra fatigue. This is it after 1 coat, and you can see it does not look great. It's super patchy. I did try to cover up the areas where I patched over with extra coats, but I did have to go back and do it 2 additional times. The 3rd time was also because like the shininess was a little bit off. So yeah, this was a ton of work. And then it was time to prime and paint this awful vanity. It's not awful, it's so beige. So I started by taking everything off, all of the screws and hardware and all of that fun stuff. Some of them were totally stripped and incredibly difficult to get off, and off camera I had to like use a hammer and like smash them off and apart. So that was very dramatic. And then I primed everything, which was super annoying, but I knew I would have such bad peeling if I didn't prime it. It's still gonna peel. It's going to be replaced eventually, so it doesn't really matter, but priming definitely helps. Next, I used some extra cabinet paint from when we painted our kitchen cabinets. Our cabinets are green, and then our island is this dark espresso brown. So I used a combination of a regular brush and a roller brush to paint like, I don't know, 50 million coats on these. I think I ended up doing at least 4 or 5. So it was pretty time consuming. Thankfully, there were only 3 doors, but I rolled and brushed it on, and I had to do, the actual base itself, and it ended up looking pretty good, not too bad. I did end up adding hardware as well. I had to order these on Amazon, and they were like special and weird for like the inlaid doors. So I attached those as well, and I also attached drawer pulls, but they were super frustrating, so you don't get to see a video of that. Next, it was time to install some peel and stick flooring. This was my first time doing peel and stick flooring somehow, so thankfully I had this checkerboard pattern that I was able to follow, but it was pretty easy to do in the middle part. This is a pretty small room, so I only had a few that went in the middle and didn't have any cuts at all. So those were super easy, but then I had to do a bunch of measuring, and then I would score it twice on the back, and it just snapped in half in order to be, cut to a proper size. So I did that all along the edges, and then I did this like measuring technique where I don't know how to describe it. Sorry, that's not helpful, but you use what's there to kind of figure out what you need to cut off. But I did that all throughout the whole room, and then anything that was weird, I created a 12 by 12 square, because these are 12 by 12 out of newsprint, and then I would lay it down, and I'll show you right here, and kind of use my fingers to bend it wherever it needed to be cut, and then I would cut it, I would trace it onto the actual tile, and then I would cut that tile, and typically it worked pretty well. So that is a good little hack. Just get a bunch of newsprint and use that for any of the weird pieces. You're going to either love or hate the next thing that I did. The inspiration for this whole bathroom, like the gold, everything, was light coming through a window, like dappled light that shines like in between tree branches. So this was my attempt at that. Okay, that was the whole inspiration for the bathroom. This was my plan all along. I did it initially, and I was like, oh, I love it. And then I looked at it the next day, and I was like, that's the most disgusting, hideous thing I've ever seen. So I tried to go in with spray paint. That really didn't work either. So I just kept messing with it, and then I realized I need to make some wall art for this. So I will make that later on in the video. But now I'm making a new mirror, and this is one I got on Facebook Marketplace, and then on Amazon I got these little wood half rounds, and I laid it all along the mirror because I wanted to plan out everything before I glued it on. I used a combination of super glue on the flat areas, and then I realized as I got to the curves that wasn't gonna work, so I switched to hot glue, and all of this knowing that these are gonna pop off as we hang it up. That's okay, no one's messing with this mirror, no one's grabbing this mirror on a regular basis, so these aren't like the most permanent great glues, but they're going to work for this. And then I needed to cover the whole thing up because I wanted to paint the edges brown, so I used some scrap paper, and I kind of did a similar technique to the floor where I pushed it around the edges and then cut it and then taped it off. And then I used some dark brown spray paint. It ended up working out pretty well, if I do say so myself. There was some overspray, which was to be expected, but I just used a razor and some Windex and scraped it off, and there were no problems. I did touch it up just a little bit, and then we got to hanging, which was so exciting to finally see it in the space. I needed my husband's help for this, but I did thankfully get one stud on one side, and then the other one wasn't a stud, so I had to add an anchor, and then we put 2 screws in. Well, I put 2 screws in, and then we hung it up, and here's my husband deciding, yeah, that looks centered, so thanks for doing that after we hung it up. Then I did have to touch it up and put all of the ones that fell off back on, which was to be expected. After that, I went back to working on the floor because it was not done. I knew I was going to have to caulk the edges because I knew I just wasn't going to do a good enough job. There were some gaps and some weird spots, so I just used some caulk, And then you can see in some places where it lines up not quite perfectly, I took caulk and I just kind of used my finger to push it in there, and then I used like 2 different wet paper towels to wipe it up to make sure I didn't have any residue. So I did that with the whole floor. I wasn't initially planning on doing this. I was planning on just like doing some touch-ups, but as I was there on the ground, I realized pretty much all of it needed to be done. And then I grabbed some beige caulk. Oh my goodness, I've been using so much caulk in this video. And I really tried to fill that weird gap from before even better. I know I probably should have done this before, but I didn't have beige caulk initially. Now at this point, I was finishing up and I still hated the walls. So this was actually my tester for like the patterns on the walls. And I was like, what if I take this canvas and I make some big wall art that takes up space and it takes away from like the weirdness, the potential weirdness of the patchy walls, even though that was the whole point of the bathroom, right? So I did do a little, 180 little pivot. Sometimes you got to in the middle of projects. And honestly, I've been wanting to use oil pastels for such a long time. It's been like since high school since I've used them. So it's been on my list to want to do this. So I figured, why not? I have gotten some feedback that this art is kind of creepy, potentially demonic even, that's your opinion, if that is your opinion, but I love it. I think it's fun. Another thing I wanted to do for this bathroom when I was trying to decide was like eyeball mirrors all over, and my mom was like, that's too weird. So this was kind of the compromise. My husband didn't like that either. He doesn't really like the art, but I'm the artist. So what are you going to do? You're not redoing the bathroom. Just kidding. I do love him, even though I give him crap. But anyway, to make it a little bit more professional, I whipped out my dad's miter saw and I cut some frames. And I was really proud of myself for doing this because typically anything that involves like the slightest amount of math, I will fail at. And I did mess up on one of them. So, 2 out of 3 is not bad, but I just used some wood glue to attach them, and I did have to add some wood filler to the edges, and then I stained them and sealed them, and it looks so much better. And then to hang the actual frames, I used these D-hooks, and then you screw them in, and you use wire to go across and attach the hooks, and then you put like a screw in the wall and use the wire to hang it. So if you're ever trying to hang a canvas and there's nothing on the back, that is a nice little hack. So I whipped out my stud finder. No studs right there, at least. The other one had a stud. So we got, 1 out of 3, not bad. That one had a stud, and then the last one did not. Then I was like, okay, well, now we've moved where the towel rack is. So this is the new towel rack location. I got these nice matte black like accessories. I also got a new toilet paper dispenser, so that was nice. And then I also made these hand art things. And then very last minute, I was like, no, this all looks so great. I need to switch out this hideous sink faucet. So that's what I did. And let's remind ourselves how awful this was before, right? So plain, so boring. Like, I'm an artist. It's unacceptable. The caulk was awful. The floor was awful. And boom, bam. New bathroom, kind of weird, kind of funky. I love it though. I feel like it's so much fun. It like gives like circus yet modern to me vibes. I definitely love the dark brown and this new, like that's a new sink. There is some still like messed up stuff in the sink, but it's so much better. There's the new handles. The flooring looks great. It looks so much cleaner. I guess it's used to trip on like our old flooring, and now it's like flat and nice. And I love all of the little details. All of the wood goes together, the wood frames, the wood vanity, the wood hands. I love my spooky, creepy art. And you know what? I don't hate the weird patches that much, especially now that they're under some art and whatnot. It doesn't bother me. We've got some extra decor, and I am just so happy. I know that this bathroom is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but that's okay because it is my cup of tea. I'm so glad that we've made this change. I don't know what took me so long. At the time, I felt like it was just good enough, but looking back, I cannot believe I allowed people into that bathroom with the caulk looking the way it did, with that sink, with the floor, with everything, but it is so much better. Eventually, when we have the money, we will completely redo the bathroom, but I love doing temporary renovations because you can totally experiment. Like, this was a weird renovation, but it doesn't matter because it's not permanent, and I cannot wait till we redo it again and get to experiment all over. Hope you got some inspiration from this video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy making.